how do you feel this will affect the voters later on with this new initiative?
I think uh, with Alaska being known as a red state, it's really interesting to see how this did pass. And I think to allow an opportunity for not only Democrats but also third party representation to go into again the general elections. I think that we might actually be seeing some more blue in Alaska following this. Just because, again, looking at the national election and seeing kind of the breakdown of how the country went, more than 150,000 were for Trump. Well, then about a little less than that were for Biden. I think that specifically it not only just represents what's going on throughout the rest of the country of how the country is pretty much divided almost equally, but it really does show that Alaska is also representing the same way with their own population. So, like I said, I think that what does this mean for voters? I think that it just means that there's more an opportunity for the people who vote blue to actually get someone to represent them into office.
I think, and you make an interesting point there. I really think that Alaska may be going down a purple path where all of a sudden, with this top four primary situation, you open it up as you stated earlier with the third party candidates, and I think a third party candidate could just slip in there in that fourth spot. They don't have to put up a magnificent primary performance to jump into the general. And next thing you know, if the Republican incumbent or the Democrat incumbent is struggling, all of a sudden a third party candidate can pop up and claim victory and win. So I think this entire initiative benefits third parties the most. We had a great question from Brett. Is this and he mentions ranked choice voting. And as I stated, also in this initiative, Alaska joins Maine in ranked choice general elections, including the presidency. Thank you, Brett. So, how do you think ranked choice voting? We talked about the top four primaries. How do you think ranked choice voting will affect electoral outcomes in Alaska?
I think that it's going to be a lot of split. I think there's going to be split votes when it comes to how it could end up in the Electoral College. We saw there were multiple split votes when it came to the Electoral College just in the national election. Just recently, we saw that in just in Maine too. There was a split vote. I think personally myself, though, this was actually the very first election I ever experienced a ranked election, specifically here locally in Berkeley, California. The mayoral election was a ranked election. I was really confused actually when I saw it. I was expecting to vote for a single person, but instead it said, choose number one is your, most the person you want to have in office, and number five, your least wanted in office. And at first, when I saw, it, I'm like, oh, it took me a second. I was like, whoa, this is different for me. And I think it's going to take for people who aren't used to it or who aren't expecting it. It's going to make them take a step back because when I saw that, at least on the mayoral side, I wondered what were the implications or the ramifications of putting someone else as second or someone else as third when I only knew who I wanted as first, but I didn't really know what second, third, fourth really did in the mathematic equation after it. So I think for me, it's a brand new system, at least from my perspective. But I think that looking at what will happen in Alaska, I think that it could end up being represented like how Maine is with a split vote.
And Marco, in your experiences with the ranked choice voting that you faced in the mayor race as a voter, did you feel like and you said you had trouble understanding it. Do you feel like there should be an alternative in the way that ranked choice voting is explained? When you received your ballot, did you receive any kind of explanation whatsoever in regards to ranked choice voting?
Unfortunately, not. When I went to the voting location, I went in person and I went a few days in early voting. And when I got to the very last card after the presidential national portion, I went to the mayoral election, and it only just showed it just like how I said earlier, choose your most the candidate you want most is number one, and the candidate you want least is fifth. But it didn't really explain again the ramifications of what two, three, and four really meant. As someone again who only understood who do you want? Yes or no? You know what I mean? If you just click yes on one candidate, you understand that you're putting all of your vote to that said candidate. But with this rank system, I don't really know what was happening to these two, three, four positions. I didn't know if they're also getting a portion of the vote or if it's just majority. I think that to have clarification for future voters, especially in Alaska, since this will be implemented in the 2022 election. I think that there should be some kind of information. I think that people should be made aware, especially on the ballot itself, to explain a little bit about what this new system is and how it'll affect the runoff or the general election moving forward.
Marco, I can explain a little bit here with ranked choice voting. If a candidate, the top candidate who reaches 50 plus 1%, so that's the majority, 50 plus 1%, like what Susan Collins did in Maine, you automatically win. But if no candidate reaches 50 plus 1%, 51% or more,
Mm.
you then have rounds of voting where the candidate with the lowest vote total gets eliminated, and then the individuals who ranked a candidate second, those totals get placed to that candidate. So for example, if there are 5 candidates on a ballot
Mhm.
and no one gets to 51%, the last candidate gets knocked off. Their second place vote, the last candidate, it's so hard to explain with this stuff. The last candidate's votes get uh, merged into the candidate above them, and then it goes forward in that way. It's a very complicated process, and we could go on and on about it, but we haven't had any situation yet nationally, especially in Maine, where no one reached 51% and then they had to go through several rounds. Some critics will say that ranked choice voting, you know, may pose a situation where you'll start counting so much and then it can take too much time to find a result. So that's a negative when it comes to ranked choice voting. You mentioned before the broadcast even started, you really wanted to talk about the dark money aspect of this ballot initiative. Can you tell the audience the dark money aspect of this initiative?
Yeah, so I'm more than happy to explain about this. So, pretty much what part of this, the ballot measure two pushes forward is three things. The first thing is it requires groups to publicly announce the source of their money that's being donated to the candidates. This is really important because it shows the ties, like kind of where this money's coming from, and it just shows that everyone's upfront about it. So there's no dark money, there's nothing in the shadows, and I'll go into that in just a second. But again, the other two big points are it merges the entire state's two primary elections ballots into a single one. And lastly, there's the four top four voters get moved into from the primary, get moved into, regardless of any party, get moved into the general election. And this is unprecedented because this is the only state that is doing all three of these at the same time. There have been other states, again, as we said earlier, that are doing pieces of this, but not all of them. So again, kind of going a little bit more in depth on dark money, right? So specifically in like Alaska, there's like the money flow and the idea of independent expenditure groups. Okay, so these groups are required to disclose their donors, but if the donor is like an outside group, there's a little they have to if it's over $2,000, they have to announce who they are. If it's an outside group from outside these independent expenditure groups. So again, it's just to make everything put everything more out in the open. It's to just kind of have everyone understand who's getting money from whom, because as we all know, money with candidates, usually there's a reason they're getting money. And so yeah.
Yeah, big money in politics is certainly a big component. Some will say that it rules the political system. You can argue that all day, or maybe there will be others who say it does not have a factor because of party strength, or there are other factors more important. But the disclosure of big money, dark money in display here. Uh, do you think, and this may be more of a media question, I
Mm.
think it's interesting to ask about media coverage. Do you think that we focus so much on the candidates themselves that we forget how important a ballot initiative such as this one that has direct systematic change,
You
direct
know,
impact, excuse me.
oh no, go ahead. I think it's really important as being a reporter that worked in DC for some time. It was really important, to cover not only the legislature and the Senate and all of the pretty much everyone who's representing each state, but it's also important to know locally what's going on. I think this ballot measure is really important to notice and to really highlight. And unfortunately, there's only really just a couple of organizations that have even talked about it already in like the last hour 30 minutes that I've been able to find. So I think getting this information out there is really important, not only for the people in the rest of the country, but people in there in Alaska there too. Again, it's always easy to do a story and to report on the face of what's going on. But I think, like what you said earlier, Cameron, this is complicated stuff. It's hard to talk about. And you could talk about it for hours, actually. We could talk about it. But a lot of people don't have the time to do that. And a lot of journalists don't have the expertise to break down what these ballot measures really mean and the overall ramifications that they'll have on the community that they're affecting. So, what do we do? What you're supposed to do is do exactly what we're doing here. We do our best to take the time, break it down, and inform everyone, as many people as we can, about what's going on, what the changes are, what the new initiatives are. And yeah, so I think journalists need to do a little bit of a better job at not only just reporting on the names and the big faces in Congress and in the Senate, but also the stuff that's happening behind the scenes or, on the down low. Because again, this is unprecedented. This is a big change for Alaska that I don't think a lot of people would have really known about if just because it's so complicated.
And oftentimes you'll hear the candidates themselves, whenever they're making their pitch for why voters should vote for them, they'll say that healthcare is on the ballot, or democracy is on the ballot, or gun rights are on the ballot. But actually, it's the ballot initiative about gun rights, or the ballot initiative about healthcare, or the ballot initiative about
Mm-hmm.
Electoral structures such as this one that determine the fate of a state more than just selecting a candidate, because that candidate can change, that candidate can do a complete 180, that candidate can switch parties. So the initiative has a more direct impact, hence the name direct democracy. So yes, I totally agree with you. I think these initiatives play such an important role in these states. As we wrap things up here on HAPS TV, I know you've been doing a lot of broadcasts here and doing so much here on this great platform. What are your upcoming broadcasts here on HAPS?
Yeah, no, thanks for letting me talk a little bit about what's coming up, Cameron. I think with what's going on in our country right now is we're seeing a huge sense of change, and there's a lot of hot topics that are going on, especially after the recent, national election. So I'm actually doing the next broadcast series that I'm doing, and is a mini series specifically looking in on these big topic issues that are happening all across the country. This week specifically, we're going to be diving deep into Arizona, talking about the legalized marijuana. We're going to be looking at the Senate race. We're going to be looking at how everything just pretty much flipped to blue. And I have reporters, I have people from the Republican side all lined up, ready to go on air and talk to people and talk to me and talk to you. I think it's going to be a really great mini series. Where after that, we're going to be looking at other states, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and then even like here with Alaska. This is in its own ways part of a sense of the series. It's kind of like the I would say the preamble to it, in Congress speak. But it's just to kick things off, because again, there's so much change going on in the country, not only just Alaska, but other parts. I think it's important for people to know what's going on in their own state, but also know what's going on in other states as well. And so again, that can be really hard to keep track of everything. So that's why myself and other reporters out there want to break it down for you guys in a really clean and digestible way. So that's what I'll be doing. But Cameron, I think you're doing something on Thursday this week. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, on Thursday, I'm going to be interviewing a candidate running for California's 2022 governor race. There's already someone who's jumped in, and we haven't even started 2021 yet. Republican Nicholas Wildstar will be joining me at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on HAPS TV. So check out that. Uh, Check out Marco's broadcast, and he's going to continue to broadcast more. And there's so much great content here at HAPS TV, all kinds of topics, all kinds of reporting, all of the time here on HAPS TV. For Marco Torres, I'm Cameron Sadeghi. Thank you so much for watching and have a great night. All right, that
Great.
was great. Yeah.